everybody can hear me. Shabbat Shalom. I know most people are just now beginning to close their Shabbat out. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody that is under the sound of my voice. I hope you're having a blessed Sabbath. I hope everything is going well with you. So we have been talking about the past few nights. We've been talking about America. I came on and I did a video last night. What is America Part 3? I'm not too happy with my explanation in that video. So I'm going to try to get the information out a little bit differently this time. I think I will put the video out, the one that I did last night. I'll go ahead and make it available. But we're going to try to get some of the information out again. And you'll have to forgive me. My sons are going to be practicing guitar behind me. So I'll just take a walk and talk. So we discussed in the past couple of days, well, we first asked the question, what type of nation is America? It's not like any other nation that has existed, right? It has parts of many different nations in it. Like the governing style is a Roman style governing style, but it exists as a democracy where these positions are supposedly filled by the people. So it is a brand new style of governing system that began to take popularity after its inception. So who came up with the ideas? How did they come to fruition? What was the real secret intention, that we know of as America, the government experiment that we know of as America? And so we started initially with the concept of finding your name in prophecy and how important that is in recognizing how to proceed into the future. Because we know that Elohim exists, and we know that Elohim is one, and that he exists as one throughout every era of time. Does that make sense? So this is why he's able to see the beginning from the end, because he exists outside of that time system that we believe, that we are tied to. Do you see what I'm saying? He exists outside that, and therefore he can enter it at any moment it's like an equation, right? I always liken it to an equation, that the person that creates the equation, if you're writing a math equation, the x plus xy equals z, and in parentheses xy. And so if you were to simplify this equation, you would do all the processes to simplify the equation, and the equation would get bigger and bigger and bigger as you're writing the processes out. Those of you that remember algebra, writing those processes out makes a larger and larger equation, until once the processes begin to cancel each other out, the equation gets smaller again, and then you've simplified it down to its final form. So I always, oh my gosh, I stepped in the mud. So I always compare Elohim to the mathematician that's writing the equation, right? And that he's already written the equation, and that it exists in front of him on a chalkboard. This is what I always imagine in my mind when I'm thinking about creation, that he's got all of it on this chalkboard, and it starts off simple and it gets bigger and bigger, and then it's whittled down into its simplest form at the end, right? So we exist somewhere within the equation, and we can see and we really can only see the elements of the equation that are around us, right? Because we can't see what's happened in the past, without being told. And we definitely can't see what happened or what's going to happen in the future without being told, right? And so, since Elohim is the mathematician himself, he can see all aspects of the equation and give you components of the equation from both past and future into your present state. Do you see what I'm saying? So, when you consider the Bible and that the Bible is a book of prophecies, then your interaction with the Bible is going to be, based off those facts that you find in it. Because if you find out the Bible has true prophecies in it, you then try to figure out where you are in it. Do you see what I'm saying? And when we look at America, what we're literally looking at is the culmination of a group of men who, from ancient times, have set forth to put biblical prophecy into reality. Does that make sense? This is what America is. And you can go throughout time and prove that, because you can see where people have managed to take the prophecy, take the equator's equation, and utilize the pieces from it that apply to themselves and that apply to other groups in the text to their society and to the building of their society. So it starts off, and just to do a quick synopsis on what else we talked about, it starts off way back when Magog and barbarian hordes first get a hold of some biblical understanding. Do you see what I'm saying? Remember, we talked about a few days ago how two groups of Magogites, both of which are trying to conquer Rome. Yes? Magogite groups that are trying to conquer Rome, both are stopped from doing so by the Pope. And the Pope was able to, you know, stop this. It's based off of we don't know what. It's a secret. But we consider knowing that the Pope has the information about the future because they're Romans and because they're the ones that sacked the temple and they still have the artifacts from the temple, because they know and understand the text so well, being now Christians for about 200 years or so. They're able to identify people in life from the text. And so we talked about how this particular Pope managed to stop some of the greatest murderers in history, some of the greatest plunderers in history from destroying Rome, right? Twice. Attila the Hun was stopped from destroying Rome by this Pope. Another Magogite general was stopped from destroying Rome by the same Pope 3 years earlier. What we have theorized is that this Pope, yes? Yes? What? I'll be in there in a minute. So what we've theorized, I'll be inside in a minute. So what we've theorized is that this Pope must have told him or them information that only they would have known, and by that information stopped them from wanting to destroy Rome because of the power of the information. What we have speculated is that this Pope must have told them an ancient name, the name of Magog. Do you see what I'm saying? That allowed these people to say, since this Pope knows our ancient name, he must have some very powerful magic that may serve us in the future. therefore we will not destroy this city. There had to be some very powerful force, convincing force, that like barbarians in the greatest city in the world. Do you see what I'm saying? The barbarians want to loot and steal and plunder. That's what pirates do. That's what barbarians do. This is what Magogites did. They were synonymous with this behavior, right? They killed Christians. They, you know, joyed in killing Christians because they were of a much different religious sect, one that denounced theirs, right? Which I'm sure they weren't accustomed to. So they joyed in killing Christians. Something that the Pope said to both Attila the Hun, one of the most powerful Magogite rulers in history, and then one other one, I can't remember what his name was, to stop them from destroying Rome in within 3 years, 2 times in 3 years. He must have told them their prophecy, right? He must have pointed at their name in the text, a name that they wouldn't have known the Huns by, or the Alans, or the Visigoths, or whichever other group it was that was going to sack Rome. I believe maybe the Visigoths. He must have told them an ancient name which they wouldn't have known him by, or them by. He must have told them that they were Magog, and they were in the text, and they were predicted to come and do this very thing. Do you see what I'm saying? And he must have shown them, from as much as they could understand, the text. Because he didn't go out to meet them with an army. He went out with words. And the only words strong enough to stop an invasion of a barbarian army are prophecies. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is how we recognize that in history, finding yourself in prophecy matters, because those same Vandals, or maybe it was the Vandals, those same, because the Vandals are a Magogite group that was active in North Africa and Italy in these same times. So maybe it was the Vandals and not the Visigoths, but they're all the same Magogite groups, right? Just coming from different areas. So what we recognize is that those groups, those same people, ended up coming back. They ended up coming back to Rome and conquering Rome a little later on, and then assuming the position of the Romans in history, so that people who don't know their history well enough will assume that the Lombards, or whatever group of Magogites, took over Rome. I think it was the Lombards from the video, from Mystery of Magog, so that you won't be able to distinguish between the ancient Romans and the current Romans. People wonder, when did Rome become Italy? It became Italy, really, when the Gothic tribes, the Magogite tribes, took over. The Lombards, this particular Germanic group, took over in about 600 AD. You know, around the same time that the Muslims took control of the Middle East, of Saudi Arabia. You have another Magogite group, an Arab group, but then a Magogite group comes in and merges with them and takes over, taking over the region to their east. Do you see what I'm saying? So we're not talking about the history of America here. We're giving a quick synopsis. So they come back, and as they began to recognize the truth in these Christian scriptures, quote unquote, they began to convert to Christianity. Some of them, a large part, convert to Christianity. Some of them convert to Judaism. We know them as the Khazars. This is the particular Magogite group that converts to Christianity. You have another large Magog group in England and in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, that convert to Christianity, right? Did I say that the Khazars converted to Christianity? I meant Judaism. You have another large group in the West that convert to Christianity. So do you see that all these very large Magogite groups start converting to Abrahamic religions around 1000 BC or AD? Then they start to fight for Jerusalem. Do you see what I'm saying? They begin to fight for Jerusalem. So you have this group that, is a Magogite Muslim group who is in control of Jerusalem. And then you have the Magogite Western faction from England in control of Rome, but coming down now to capture Jerusalem. Do you see what I mean? And so they do. Remember, we talked about this the other day. They do conquering Jerusalem, and then they rediscover these ancient artifacts that pertain to the Bible. For one, all of these ancient scriptures that the Muslims had. Do you see what I'm saying? And had access to all of these prophecies that they had access to, being in Jerusalem and having access to some of the ancient information in Jerusalem. Do you see what I mean? Remember, Augustine and all of them had to still go to Jerusalem to get the most accurate information in the Roman Empire. So the Romans didn't have everything. So when the Magogites conquered Rome, they had some materials, but they didn't have all of them. And then remember, they didn't even recognize the importance of them. Do you see what I mean? They had the materials that told the future, Elohim's word that tells the future, and recognize that that's what they had. Because in Rome and in England and all these places, they continued to be barbarians and converting to these Abrahamic religions where the truth is. Even if it's watered down within 3 different sections, there's still truth there. So they didn't recognize that they had the key to the future in their hands. But they started to. And then once they fully recognized in the West, these, European Magogite groups, once they fully realized in the West what it was that they were missing in Jerusalem, they had to go ahead and go and get into Jerusalem, right? This is what the Crusades were about. And around these same times, you still have Jews, actual Jews, dark-skinned black Jews in England, in France, and in all of these places that are in Europe, Western Europe, where the Roman Empire had slaves and settlements, right? You still had large groups there. So this is where this culture comes from. The monarchy in, I know, Jackson, the monarchy in England. I know, y'all. The monarchy in England is set up around the monarchy in the Bible because the Hebrews that were in England began to teach the Angles, the English, and the Saxons, the Germanic Magogite tribes that invaded England, started to teach them about royalty through the scriptures, right? Do you see what I'm saying? This is where you get God save the queen, may the queen live forever. This is from the Bible. Do you see what I'm saying? This is it. That's in what, First Samuel, Second Samuel? You see what I'm saying? The fact that the queen has, and now we have a king in England, right? The fact that he sits on a throne that has 12 steps, the fact that he has a royal scepter like the Judites would have, the fact that he has the stone of Jacob, the one that he was supposedly slept on, I believe in Bethel. Do you see what I'm saying? How the queen celebrates it, or the king now celebrates a jubilee. These are all Hebraic aspects that in modern times, white people would look back and say, oh, we must have been the Hebrews. No, you were just Hebrew adjacent. This is where this royalty, this ancient style of monarchy and the language behind it even, this is where it comes from. This is your adjacent period, where before this, you were nomadic and, barbarian hordes. After this, you're queens and king royalty. This is where it comes from. This is where the bustiers, that's what it's called, a bustier, bustier. You know, the big booty corsets that the English wore in, royal ceremony, the bustiers that had the booty bump in them, the I guess this like underwire that made it look like you had the booty bump in English high fashion. It comes from being Hebrew adjacent. And that could sound absolutely ridiculous, but it's not. This is literally what the history is saying about ancient England. Do you see what I mean? But that changed right after the Crusades. That began to change because some ideas began to be formed from being able to recognize yourself in the text, right? We talked about this too, that if you see your name in the text and you see yourself as famous and rich in the text, and you know that this text has been known to predict the future, do you then go out and become motivated to make those prophecies come true? I think some people would, right? Some people who are evil, some people who are satanically driven, especially if they see that they have evil prophecies in the book already, maybe a group of people, a faction of people would want to make this happen. And it just so happens that there is a secret faction of people that have been active and actively practicing people manipulation or social engineering since the Crusades, and they're called the Knights Templar, the people that later became the Freemasons, right? So we see literally, we talked about how the Freemasons figured out how to implement this knowledge that they gained from Jerusalem, from being in control of Jerusalem, into their artwork, and then began to plan for a societal re-imaging. Do you see what I'm saying? Because you have to recognize it from this perspective. If you can see into the future, this is the only way that you would do something this audacious. Do you see what I mean? Prophecies. So it can't be the adversary orchestrating all of these things. It has to be the ability to accurately predict the future that allows this group of people to be audacious enough to think that they could change the past. Do you see what I mean? Because hundreds of years earlier from the Crusades, the Pope introduced these particular barbarians to the text and them in it. About 700 years later, they're back and trying to figure out how to become, since they became the Romans successfully. Do you see what I mean? They managed to weasel their way into the popehood, since they were able to blur the lines between ancient Rome and modern Rome being the Rome of the Dark Ages. Then why couldn't they further change history? Do you see what I'm saying? These Knights Templar men who see the people that are around them, who know that now that those people cursed, who know now that they are going to be the next people in line to control the world, why wouldn't they try to control the world? Why wouldn't they be motivated to do so? That's what we see in these groups that start to emerge. Because right after the Crusades, you have a purge in Europe that all of the dark-skinned Jewish people who had been living in those areas for by now about 600 or 700 years, maybe even longer than that, began to be uprooted out of their communities and pushed west, all the way down into Spain. So this starts in 1100, 1200 AD in France and England and Germany and all these places. They got rid of their Jews, right? The real Jews, the black Jews that are a part of German history, that are a part of English history, that you can see the artwork, that you can see the black royal families that existed there. This is why. They start pushing them out because they understood the notion that they could change history. Do you see what I mean? They start pushing them out of Europe to purify Europe, to remove it of any outside influence, because they were trying to take the covenant. This was an this was a clear attempt in history spanning generations where the covenant was being usurped. They had the Christian doctrine of faith, of salvation by faith. They had the Christian doctrine of the Gentiles receiving the gospel. And they know that even the Scythian can receive salvation, right? From Colossians 3:11. So they began to form the salvation around themselves. This is what happened in the Middle Ages, after the Dark Ages, when they were recognizing what was going on. This is why it's called the Dark Ages, because the Hebrews were able to still be Hebrews during this time. And the Europeans, the Magogites, were then in the dark about the text, all the way until the Crusades. When after the Crusades, they began to purge all of these black folks out down into Spain and Portugal. And then once we got into Portugal and Spain, they started the Inquisition there against Jews mostly, and they kicked us all out if we didn't accept Christianity and pushed us down into West Africa where we were for the next 200 years. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right after that, in the 14 and 1500s, you have the Renaissance, when all of these different artists were paid contracts by these royal families to recreate the artwork of the Bible in a new image, right? You have right after this portion of history that is uniquely introduced to society as the Renaissance, right? The rebirth, when art and reason and sciences were being born, right? This was just after the Hebrews were expelled. The information from the scripture was taken and then re-envisioned. Do you see what I'm saying? In a deliberate fashion, because you have the secret group emerge from the Knights of Templar with all of the secret information, and then social engineering starts to happen. And then genocides start to happen. Yes? Do you see what I'm saying? Then we're down into, it's time to eat. Okay, I'm coming. And then we're sent down into West Africa. We're sent here. And so we come up in the next era with the Renaissance, and then with this concept that this new place can be established. That it can be established out of reason, and it can be established out of witchcraft, right? We can send our, Freemason explorers to conquer these people because they're the new generation of Gog and Magog. We know that we're Gog and Magog. We lived for hoarding and raiding and pillaging and plundering. Let's continue to do it, except this time we are going to do it with flags and ships and with guns and with the technology that we've gained from our explorations that we've done. Now we're going to go out and establish this new place in a satanic order. Do you see what I'm saying? With the ancient understanding of Atlantis at its core. Do you see what I mean? And so they move to this image, or move to this concept, but since they're independently rich from the information that they've gotten, they begin to need slave labor. And so why not use the information that you've gained to also profit in the slave market? Who would be the best slaves to build this new nation? According to the Bible, who would be the best slaves to build this new satanic nation according to the Bible, you guys? The Hebrews, right? So the Hebrews, who they just kicked out about 200 years earlier, The Hebrews who are down in West Africa, successful in West Africa even. The Hebrews who you know will be cursed if you curse them, that they won't be able to resist any curse because of what they've done and they still haven't accepted Messiah. Now you go back. They've been a little time in Africa. Now you go back and put them to a new place, another place where there's some there already that have come from second Esdras north North Kingdom trail, and then back on down. We can talk about that some more. I talked about that in the other video that I did. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but we'll talk about that and explore that out as well. And then mix them up there, and then create a slow process of re-education of these people to where we are re-educated into believing we are a people group that we're not. Now all the artwork is completed. By 1619, all the art is done. Do you see what I'm saying? The artwork that's going to last as classic masterpieces, do you see what I'm saying? Forever. Do you see what I mean? By 1611, the rewrite of the Bible is done with white supremacy at its core. That's how you know that this was a concerted effort, because you have it on two different fronts. The King James Bible words the scriptures using white ideology. The places where black is needed, it's there. But the other places where black is inferenced, it's taken out and replaced with ambiguous terminology. Places where shiny is indicated, they use white, as if it's to reference skin color and not skin radiance. You see what I mean? The places where they had to input correct skin color, they did, because the text wouldn't allow for them to make it any other way, like in Song of Solomon, right? But in the places where they could get away with it, they introduced whiteness. This happened alongside the Renaissance. So it was a concerted effort with two separate groups, artists and scribes. You see what I'm saying? Artists and scribes. And so you have this revisioning of the entire scripture at the same time when you have Hebrew slaves touching down on a new continent where they were set to be re-educated. Do you see what I mean? And this brought forth by this man, Francis Bacon, who envisioned America as a new Atlantis, or in other words, New Babylon. Because the old wisdom, the old satanic understanding from Babylon comes from Atlantis, the pre-flood world that didn't sink into the ocean, was destroyed by Yah Elohim. Do you see what I mean? To recreate that anew with the same star alignments, with the same pattern of streets and cities, with the same dependence upon imagery and idolatry, with the fighting spirit, with spellcraft in its constitution. Do you see what I'm saying? With double words and trick words and secret words incorporated into their law system. My boy's in there wilding out. Do you see what I'm saying? This is when you come to the slave system, came to develop what was called today America. It was a satanic, ritualistic plan put together by people in a secretive group that can be established, have satanic doctrines, to use the prophecies of the Bible to establish a new world order. Do you understand that the new world order started 500 years ago? People talking about that they have a chance to create the new world order are mistaken when they don't understand that they've been one forever. The new world order is white supremacy, is the land of Gog and Magog, the world of Gog and Magog. Do you see what I mean? This is where we get to the system that is developed in America. The founding fathers, all of which were Freemasonic, all of which had the same Baconian philosophy in their ideology, all trained to use this doublespeak in order to implement a slave system to create the new Babylon that you see before you. You know, it's not a mistake that Bob Marley called America Babylon. Lots of people did. Hey, you guys go on in. Go on inside. I'm almost done. Y'all out here with no shoes anyway. Go on inside. I'm coming. All right, you guys give me a little bit more time here because I'm just now getting to the part where we look at what's happening in the modern era. So maybe I'll come back on tonight and finish this out. But we are right at the era of the Revolutionary War, where the slaves again, and control over the slaves and control over who gets to tax the slaves and all that begins to take place. And this really a war of nothing solidifies this new nation, because you have to have bloodshed in order to establish a new nation. The sacrifice that they had to establish America was the Revolutionary War, and the slaves were at the center of it too. Do you see what I mean? Okay, you guys, and that's where I will probably have to end it. So we're getting ready to get dinner started. Shalom, shalom, you guys. We'll maybe come back in tonight to finish this one up, but probably we'll get to it maybe in the next couple days. I really want to get to this part because this is the part where we see ourselves being implemented into these progressively more intelligent slave systems, you know, generation after generation. And the Holocaust, plural, that we endured in America, only to come out in the present day, still able to fight, right? Still cleaving to something that we know not, right? Is Yao, ready to be awakened at any moment. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, all right, you guys. We'll get back to that hopefully tonight. Shalom, shalom.